people's lives, because the movement to limit women wearing headscarves and Muslim veils, such as the burqa and the niqab, has been growing in Europe for more than a decade. Now the European Court of Justice, the EU's highest court, has ruled that employers can ban staff from wearing headscarves. Its first decision on the issue of employees wearing visible religious symbols at work. The ruling, not surprisingly, has provoked fierce debate among religious leaders and rights groups, because this is not just about headscarves, this is about all religious symbols, so it affects Christians as well, it affects Jewish people as well. So we want to discuss this now, and on the line we have Dr. Shaikh Al-Qadir, an imam at the Al-Mustafa Mosque in Blanchardstown, and also we're joined by Michael Nugent, Atheist Ireland chairman, here in studio. Michael, I might start with yourself. What do you think of the ruling?
Well, I think that the media are being a bit misleading about it. There were actually two rulings. One ruling was that you cannot ban somebody from wearing a headscarf if you do it arbitrarily, or if you do it on the basis that a customer doesn't want to deal with them. So you can't do that. That would be religious discrimination. On the other hand, if a company has a dress code policy, and that dress code policy covers not wearing either political or religious or philosophical symbols of any kind, then religion doesn't get a special exemption from that. That you can't just say, well, because I'm religious, I don't have to apply to the same rules as everybody else. So it's actually almost the opposite of what the headlines are saying. It's saying you cannot do it arbitrarily, but if you have a policy that covers all sorts of things, then religion doesn't get an exemption from that policy.
But is a policy of discrimination not a policy of discrimination, full stop?
No, it's not, because there are many companies that have dress codes. If you work for a lot of service industries companies, if you work in an airline as a cabin crew member, in fact, if you want to take it into the realms of religion, if I wanted to become a priest and then I decided I'm going to say mass wearing a t-shirt and jeans and wearing a Fianna Fáil badge, you know, people would say, no, you can't do that. So there are some businesses in the private sphere that have dress codes. Now, personally, I don't like the idea of dress codes. I would rather people be able to wear whatever they want. But if a company does have a dress code, and if that dress code is equally applied to everybody, then I don't think that religions should have an exemption from that.
All right, Shaikh Al-Qadir is on the line. Shaikh, what do you make of that?
Well, I personally, first of all, condemn and deplore this decision that it is now lawful for employers to ban workers from the wearing of the hijab. And this is not just about the hijab. I mean, as you've said, Sikhs that wear the turban are affected, Jews are affected, but a large proportion of the Muslim women, majority of which wear the hijab not because it is a religious symbol, but because it is part of their identity, and it is part of the religious obligation, and they choose to do so. Now, what happens is, with this ban, the access to employment for Muslim women already is a big challenge. They are facing a triple penalty because of their gender, because of their ethnicity, and because of their religion now. In France, in 2014, the CV testing showed that Muslim women wearing the headscarf when applying for a job had only 1% return rate. And when you look at it from that perspective, then you see that now it becomes more difficult. I mean, Muslim women were facing a challenge that in certain Middle Eastern countries, in certain countries in Asia, they were being oppressed. They did not have the choice. They didn't have the chances to play a role in the society. In the West, they do have these chances, and they would like to, contribute. They would like to be to work. They would like to be a professional at the same time, be independent at the same time. But now, suddenly, their religion becomes an obstacle. And it's not the religion. It's actually, I believe, this is clearly discrimination. I believe that this is clearly sending a message that, you need to assimilate. Europe itself, I think there is a current shift which is very worrying, which started from the US Trump presidency, rise of radical right, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim sentiments, now the ban on religious dressing. And I think that Europe, which was found, and which one of the great things about Europe is its tolerance, diversity, and that somehow I think there is a shift which is very worrying. That worries me, worries my family, worries my community, and this is really, problematic. My wife is currently applying for a job, and we were talking about it, and she has never worked before, and this is the first time. Our children have grown up now, and she would like to work, and she absolutely, can work, and she would like to. But imagine she finds a place there that is suitable for her to work, but the employer decides, well, because you're wearing the headscarf, you're not welcome here.
What do you say to that, Michael? Because is that ever an acceptable or desirable situation that anyone would find themselves discriminated against in terms of a job because of what they're wearing?
Well, as I say, personally, I don't believe in dress codes. I think they're a bad idea. But it is the case within society that we do allow private companies to have dress codes, and indeed we allow religions to have dress codes. There are circumstances within Islam where people would have to wear certain clothes in order to perform certain jobs within the religion of Islam. There's also a hell of a lot of discrimination against women within Islam, and particularly in Islamic states, that is considerably worse than not being able to wear a headscarf if you want to get a job. So I think
that is a different argument, though.
No, it's because the argument was put that this is in order to protect Islamic women. If you want to protect Islamic women, which I think is a very good idea, then you start by trying to end the severe discrimination by Islamic regimes against Islamic women, and indeed against gay people in Islam.
Personally speaking, myself, I have been, and many other Muslim scholars have been speaking against this kind of oppression, and we have been speaking out against it. But at the same time, this is not the right response. That because in certain countries, in Saudi Arabia or Iran, Muslim women have no rights, this is why here in Europe we should also wait until they receive the rights there, then only Muslim women should be free to wear what they want here. That is not the right argument. That is sending a wrong message. We are better in the West. We are much better when it comes to our moral values, when it comes to tolerance, when it comes to accepting diversity and accepting pluralism. We are a pluralist society, and we should keep it that way. And I think the way, the shift at the moment, the political shift, is a very dangerous shift, because what is happening is Europe, which is a pluralist society, a very diverse society, is now changing to a society where there is no tolerance, where people have to assimilate, and if they don't, they are not welcome. And this is the wrong kind of message that is being sent.
I agree completely with you about pluralism, and as I say, personally, I'm against dress codes. I think it's a bad idea. But all that this court ruling is saying is that, firstly, you cannot discriminate arbitrarily on the grounds of religion. But if a private company has a dress code, and private companies do have dress codes, and that dress code is applied equally against religious and political and philosophical symbols, then nobody should be exempt from that. In other words, you shouldn't be able to just say...
Let him finish the point.
In other words, Umar, for example, if you wanted to, or I don't mean you personally, but if somebody wanted to get a job in a particular company that has a dress code, and they wanted to say, well, I want to wear a badge saying I support Fianna Fáil or the Socialist Party or Fine Gael, and I want to wear that during my work, people would intuitively say, no, that's not what your job is for. You can wear that in your spare time.
Okay, three things. First of all, a political ideology and expression is different than wearing the hijab. Wearing the hijab is part of the Muslim identity, and it's not something that, like politics. The second thing is we need to look at the context of this ruling. This ruling that has come is because the Belgium's Court of Cassation referred a case of a Moroccan Muslim woman that was wearing the hijab, worked as a receptionist in security giant G4S. And secondly, there was another case of another Muslim lady, Asma, who was wearing the hijab, who was dismissed from a French company, Micropole. And again, these companies, they do not have a specific, what is the, tell me what is dress code is of a receptionist.
Well, the first company is a security company, and because it's a security company, it feels it should have a neutral dress code. Secondly, with regard to that company, the woman who took that case was employed for 3 years without wearing a veil and had no problem not wearing a veil for the first 3 years of her employment, and then she suddenly decided that her religion meant that she should take.
Is that not her choice, Michael? Should people, and on the point that Sheikh Al-Qadri is making here in relation to the tolerance of society in Europe, should people not be able to wear what they want to wear, particularly in relation to their identity? And for a lot of people, religion is a very fundamental part of their identity.
Well, as I say, personally, I don't agree with dress codes. You know, I'm quite clear on that.
But you do agree with the ruling?
I do agree with the ruling, because what the ruling says is that if there is a dress code that is applied equally to everybody, then you shouldn't get an exemption simply because of your religion.
But is that not discrimination applied equally to everyone? Discrimination against Catholics, for example, in that same company, who wouldn't be able to have Ash Wednesday marks on their head, for example, on once a year.
Exactly, yeah.
But is that acceptable, to discriminate against everyone equally just because you're doing it against everyone equally?
But if you're doing it against everyone equally, then you're not discriminating. That's the whole point of discrimination, is that you have to be singling out certain people.
Because as Sheikh Al-Qadri has said, there are some women, Muslim women, may not feel they could even go for a job in that company as a result of the policy. Is that not discrimination?
No, well, there is actually the ruling is actually quite nuanced, and it does address that it does say that there is a concept called indirect discrimination, which is that if you do have a ruling that on the face of it appears to be neutral, but that in practice it affects one group of people more than another group of people, and in that particular case it will be up to the courts in each individual country to say, well, is this particular indirect discrimination proportionate to a legitimate aim, and if it isn't, then that could be deemed to be illegal as well. Alright,
I'll give the final word to you, Sheikh Al-Qadri.
I believe the ruling by the ECJ today is a serious threat to the principles of equality, justice and freedoms that the EU must uphold.
All right, Sheikh Al-Qadri, Imam at the Al Mustafa Mosque in Blanchardstown, and also Michael Nugent, Atheist Ireland Chairman. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us.
Thanks. It's